strategy. But before we go there, let's just ask, how do you hold marketing accountable? What are the KPIs that drive marketing success? According to you, according to your boss, the CEO, your colleagues, the CFO, your teams? And there really seems to have been a paradigm shift. Because I think what we've done is we've seen a decade of movement where the marketers come from a profile of being the spender that didn't have a good sense and not a lot of respect in the board of a sense of responsibility and accountability around the effectiveness of that spend. You know, we've all heard the songs about getting close to the CFO, becoming friends with the CFO, and so now when we ask marketers, what are your KPIs? It's number one, business growth. Very simple. My accountability is to help drive the business. We don't do our job if we don't drive demand. Full stop. Number two, MRR. So great that we drive revenue, but at what cost? I'm expected to understand and drive an efficiency in the programs that drive demand. And only number three, brand health. Brand health very much moved to a role of an enabler to get to business growth rather than the end goal. And this is a significant change, not just when we talk to the marketers, but also when we talk to the colleagues of the marketers. Because if you take those trends in mind, what seems to have happened is that where there was a world of, you know, I'm the custodian of the brand and now I'm very interested in spend, really, there isn't a peer of the marketer, there isn't a boss of the marketer that is saying, those trends outside there, we need to move our business. And there's one person in the board or in our company that can help us do that. It's marketing. Because of that enormous surge of digital and social, marketing was there first. And people are recognizing in the company that somebody needs to take the lead. And people are saying, marketing, what do we do? It's a real sense of responsibility that we sense when we talk to CMOs, but also to the peers. A real sense that this is driving such transparency, so many touch points, you've got to help us drive where we go. And don't take my word for it, here's an interesting statistic. We did a survey, well the AA actually did it, with Booz Allen 7 years ago. And the question was, does marketing work closely with the CEO to drive the business strategy? 38% said yes, 7 years ago. Now, same methodology, same quant. Over almost 60%. Marketing is now seen as a key influencer. Another question on the same front, there's about 7 there. Is marketing helping us take major investment decisions about market entry, investment platforms and so on? Movement from 19% to 33%. Very significant change. Influence is there. It comes with responsibility. So what we did, and again, of course, I'm never going to be able to summarize the enormous breadth, because if you've taken the survey, it takes a good 20 minutes to do. The interviews were an hour. There's no way that we're going to be able to give you a good representation there. But we've taken some high points. And we put on a lens that says, what are the differences in the scores between the winners and the losers? Because we looked at how well are these companies doing, right? So we really said, how are the people giving answers depending on their business performance? And I'll go back to the trends for 1 minute. On trends, everybody basically said the same thing, except on one point, big data. The overperformers versus their peers, versus their competition, mentioned big data 30% more in the top 3 trends. Interesting fact. In fact, when you drill down even further, you'll see that there's 3 statements there. We have the right data and analytics available to help us make business decisions. Significant difference. Our brand KPIs are clearly linked to the business performance. Significant difference. We're able to leverage the data and the analytics that we have to drive business growth. Significant difference between overperformers and underperformers. Big data, important. Can we move the mouse? Oh, actually I can move the mouse, because it seems to be in the way of these things. There we go. But it's not all about big data. Because we asked about creativity, we asked about the value of ideas, we asked about the importance moving forward of creativity. And actually we started with a question that I think is in many people's mind. Is big data the enemy of creativity? Will it stunt creative thinking? Well, 66% of marketers said absolutely not. Interestingly, on the agency side, that number seems to be much, much lower. So marketers see that this is something that needs to be done. And if we ask, how important will creativity be moving forward? Huge difference between the overachievers and the underachieving competitors. Overachievers see that creativity will only get more important to cut through the clutter, to come up with the new concepts, as I'll show in a minute, that break through and offer something that drives sharing growth. Overwhelming results in a direction. Now, that creativity, and this is fun because we were at the stage just a moment ago talking to mostly advertising people, I think. The creativity is needed, and then we asked people, so what do you do and what does your agency do? Those findings will come later. But quite frankly, there's a lot of talk about bringing things back in-house. On content management, and sometimes on content generation, certainly on community management. You can't outsource that to someone else. These are our consumers, we learn from them, it's the new marketing. But nobody said, we're going to bring creativity inside. Now what they said is, we need our agencies, we need our creative partners to think bigger, to apply that creativity to a much bigger question. Because, of course, Sketches is wonderful. This is a 10-year-old campaign, Dove Real Beauty, right? The concept has been there for 10 years. But now it's been reinvented by Ogilvy Brazil, kudos to them. And it's the most watched piece of film ever, 145 million, Keith just told me, and congratulations to the team. That creativity has always been important and will always be necessary. But there's more. This is an example from McCormick, and I don't know how many of you know it, because I didn't know about it until 2 weeks ago. So McCormick sells spices in a bottle. Very difficult to innovate around. Very, very commoditized product. They were this close to being delisted at Walmart, which basically meant that they would go out of business. And they took a step back and said, but what is the need that we're addressing? And in a world where everybody's working, there's no time to learn cooking anymore, there's no time to sort of peruse cooking magazine and come up with great ideas, people were telling them that actually they find it very difficult to choose what to cook. And they applied some of the brilliant ideas that we know from Pandora and other services like Spotify, and they do a little test called your flavor preference test. And you get 20 pictures of foods and you have to say up, down, or up. I like it or I don't. And the moment you've done that, you get your own personal flavor preference and lots of recipes that come with it. Now, did this cost them a lot of money? Well, probably some, but not a lot. Is this a completely new product? No, the spices are exactly the same. Did it drive share? You betcha. Did it actually get them a distribution increase instead of a delisting? You betcha. Thinking back to what consumers are really facing and saying, what beyond the product can we offer? The product service offering. And then I'm wearing one, many of you are, I think, the ultimate example out there, and we're going to be asking you for yours, is really the Nike Fuel Band, because it moves from sort of product to products and service to total experience. Nike, I don't think anybody would argue, understands better than anyone else that that first step of exercising is the most difficult. That actually the running experience or the sports experience is much more than the running alone. It's the preparations, the planning, the thinking through the routes, and then the celebrating with your friends, the congratulating yourself, the coaching program you're on, the advancement. And what they've done through a complete integrated approach is they've helped you along the way, and they have dramatically expanded their involvement in your experience. That's total experience. They didn't come up with that on their own. They came up with that with their agency partners. That's total experience creativity. And that's applying the creativity gene, if you like, to a much bigger business question. So it is about big data. It's also about big ideas. But there was another key theme that came out, and it's purpose. Now, purpose has many definitions, but let's be clear. We ask people, will brands with societal purpose, will they drive competitive advantage? And I'll be frank, in Europe, there are many organizations that believe this fully. In the US, there are just as many that say, you know what, we'll see if that's so important. We ask straight out, will it drive competitive advantage? 73% of the marketers seem to think so. All things else being equal, listen, if you're innovating like Apple was every day of the week, maybe you don't need to worry as much about it. If you've got an emotional bond with your brand, like Apple did, beyond the other brands, maybe you don't need to worry as much. But when those things start to become the same, and we know with Apple now that actually, you know what, the products, some of the other cameras are just as good or better on the phones. And in fact, we know that Samsung is really eating their sandwich with the target group that comes after the mainstream Apple users. When all things are equal, is there a purpose there? And in fact, we've seen Apple trip up because there were some things there that weren't so nice to talk about. Marketers seem to think societal purpose will drive competitive advantage. Now, how is that actually driving preference and inspiration? First, just personal pride. I'm proud of my brand purpose, over performance, over score on that metric. We engage with our employees around the brand purpose. Again, over performance, score way above the underperforming industry. We engage with our consumers and our customers around our purpose. Again, differential and significant advantage to the brands that are succeeding and outperforming. And you get examples like this, which is why it's so nice that Sujata's in the room and spoke on the main stage earlier today. Because then people start to run with it. Why is the Dove film seen by 150 million people worldwide? They didn't send it to them. People sent it to their friends because they thought it was purposeful. Why is the Dulux campaign winning TED Awards and Lions? Because it's purposeful and people share it with each other. That's the earned media. That's when the multiplier effect starts to happen. So I think it makes sense, but the statistics show it too. So in sort of summary there, big data, big ideas lead to big brand growth. But I want to go for you as marketers, I want to go a level down in terms of some of the findings and what divides the winners from the losers. Firstly, influence. I already talked a little bit about the role of marketing. What we actually see, that where marketing is regarded as a more strategic partner, those businesses outperform the others. Quite a nice finding, I think, for marketing. Where marketing has a big influence, where marketing works closely with the CEO, there seems to be overperformance compared to competitors. Now what about the collaborating with other disciplines? Because influence isn't just, you know, convincing your boss, the CEO, that something needs to happen. What we see is that marketing works far more closely with IT in the companies that overperform. Marketing, interestingly, works far more closely with HR in the companies that outperform. Now why is that? We think, this is from the core interviews, we think because all those multiple touch points start meaning that every employee will be an ambassador today, otherwise tomorrow. Someone has got to bring them along. And you know, we all know the purposeful companies where the founder has the drumbeat and everybody knows exactly what they do. But sometimes the founders leave and the bean counters take over and there's 10 years of talking about money and not about the brand purpose, and suddenly you have an organization that doesn't remember why it exists. I remember full well standing in a room like this talking about BlackBerry RIM 2 years ago, when suddenly the stuff hit the fan for them. Products weren't succeeding, and suddenly there was all this dirty laundry out there from employees criticizing leadership. And I thought it was a good example of the company just not being purpose-led anymore. And somebody stuck his hand up, and I thought, oh boy. He said, I used to be responsible for internal communication at RIM. And I held my breath because I was postulating. But he actually said that exactly what we were talking about had happened. The internal communication budget had been slashed. No one knew what the brand stood for anymore. How many of us don't work in an organization where 50% of the team changes every year? And people weren't connected to the purpose anymore. Very important. And it doesn't mean that you stop talking to finance. All of these, you see a marketer that's clearly linked into the rest of the organization. And what about folks? I mean, this is a really interesting one, I think. It's clear to me what the strategy is. Look what a huge driver of success that is. Just clarity on strategy. Not liking the strategy or disliking it, just knowing what the strategy is a big driver of success. And it's fully clear to me what the 3 priorities are. Huge difference in terms of companies that are successful or not. In fact, what we found is it's indeed less important that you are in agreement with the strategy versus just knowing what it is. And of course, many of us know that these things are important, but at the breakneck speed that Keith was talking about, we maybe forget sometimes to do these basics. And thinking global. There we have a whole chapter